Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. The COVID pandemic is not over. Not quite. But it looks like we're getting there. And I believe, and hopefully this is true, that we're closer than we were. And we're closer to returning to normal, whatever that was. I don't even think I remember anymore. But I think we're going to be in a better place than we have been, at least than we have been over the past 12 months. Okay, there are heroes in this war, because this is a war we've been in. I don't know whether you feel that way, but I certainly do. We've been at war with COVID-19, but we have heroes, and those heroes are many. They're healthcare workers, first responders, and essential workers in all industries and in jobs that I'm sure before COVID-19, we may have even taken them for granted. But we now know that those checkers in those grocery stores are essential workers, and we are grateful to them. Kudos to the scientists and the pharmaceutical companies and the industries who work to bring us the vaccines. I know that I haven't included everyone who deserves recognition and our gratitude, but hear me loudly and clearly. I am so grateful to everyone who has made a contribution. There are so many more individuals who've contributed to what I call a Herculean effort to pull us through this pandemic. And we're still being pulled, but we're close. We're close to the end. And my guest today is Dr. Leeroy Moyo, one of the frontline doctors who worked tirelessly in our war against COVID-19. He too is a hero. Welcome, Dr. Leeroy. Thank you for your work, your contribution, and thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you for that generous introduction. I'm very excited to be on the podcast.
Well, we're excited to have you here. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. I didn't ask you for a bio because I wanted you to be able to tell about your journey and how you got to get involved and immersed in COVID-19.
I'm a physician, like you rightfully pointed out at the top of your introduction. I've been working as a hospitalist physician, and what that is a physician who specializes in inpatient medicine. So I only take care of hospitalized patients. And so as you can imagine, in the last year, the kind of patients who've been hospitalized, it's largely been COVID-19 patients, essentially. I've been doing this for the last 8 years. I graduated out of residency from the University of Miami in 2013, and I've been working as a hospitalist since then.
Wow. So now where did you do your undergraduate work? Was it in Miami too?
Oh, now that's an interesting story. My journey to the University of Miami for residency, I actually did my residency in Zimbabwe, the University of Zimbabwe. And for your listeners who might be wondering where Zimbabwe is, it is just north of South Africa. So it is the second most southern country in Africa. And that's where I was born. That's where I'm from. I did my medical school at the University of Zimbabwe. It's called the Godfrey Huggins School of Medicine. Fond memories. And the interesting thing is, you go straight into medical school right out of high school. So,
Do
yes,
you?
ma'am. So, straight out of high school, I was in medical school, and that was an exciting time.
Are you ready for it?
In hindsight, yes and no. Yes and no. I was ready for it from perhaps from an academic standpoint, the rigors, the academic rigor, of medical school. I was ready for it, but I had to grow into the role. I was 18, going on 19 when I was in medical school.
Wow.
So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of growth that's still needed. And the kind of responsibility that is thrust upon the shoulders of a physician and the way a community views a physician, you kind of have to grow up fast to take up the mantle of responsibility as a physician.
Well, but I'm sure that in your experience, you see those who are not up to the challenge.
This is true. Those who are not up to the challenge, it's usually because of their motivations for going into medicine. There are lots of people who go into this profession for the wrong reasons. It might be financial. It might be because of it's a familial pathway. Grandfather was a physician. Maybe a
Mm,
grandma was a physician. Mom or dad is a physician. Siblings are physicians, and it just feels like the natural thing to do.
it's
It's
expected.
expected. Perhaps the burden of student loans. It's you know the compensation is generous in my profession, and perhaps some the pressure of student loans. People feel like they have to go into this kind of profession, to deal with student loans, and some go into it just because they're capable of it. They're capable of meeting the academic rigor, but there's a confluence of factors that make one right for this profession, and I can only but hope I got it right in doing this.
So now, how long do you stay? You go straight from high school to medical school. How many years is that?
It's a 5-year program, the most intense 5 years I've ever had in my life. The best of times, the worst of times. So it's 5 years. The first 2 years, basic sciences. So you're basically in a lecture theater from sun up to sundown. You're going into labs for dissection, for experiments and what have you, physiology experiments, anatomy, dissection for the first 2 years, biochemistry. And then in the third year, you transition to clinical education. This is when you go to the bedside. You're now seeing patients, you're learning from attending physicians at the bedside. So in the third year, you go through pathology, medicine, surgery. In the fourth year, you're going through OBGYN, pediatrics. In the fifth year, you're going back to surgery, different disciplines within surgery, urology, orthopedics, what have you, neurosurgery, and different disciplines within internal medicine in the fifth year. And then you graduate with, it's a double major, it's considered a double major. You graduate with degrees in medicine and surgery. And thereafter, you're an MD. You're 23 years old and you're an MD.
Wow, that's deep. I don't know. How do patients respond? I mean, I guess in your country they were used to it because that's the way doctors were trained.
They were used to it, but everyone's view of what a doctor looks like is pretty uniform around the world. It's a wiser looking older person. And, we were still young and some of us still had zits on our faces.
Right.
But at the end of the day, working in a hospital, it's about meeting people at a very vulnerable time. They quickly get over however they feel about you when they know that you're there to render a service and make them feel better and assist them. And, they typically get over it. They typically get over it. I still experience the same
You
questioning,
know,
in this country as well. Yeah.
well, that's true. It's a matter of, I think, obviously, bedside manner is important because that can get people to the point where they feel comfortable
It's
with
true.
you and they feel that you might be able to help them and they're willing to give you the opportunity to help them. You know, for me, bedside manner is not as important as it was for my mother. She was you had to compliment her as soon as she walked in the door. And if you did that, she was, she would listen and do whatever you said. For me, it's like you have to make sense to me. I have to understand and accept what you're saying. It has to make
That's right.
sense.
Well,
I'm very
yeah, well,
pragmatic.
there is the art and the science of medicine, right? The art being how can you connect with a patient? How can you meet someone at a vulnerable time when they're needing help and talk to them in a way that they can understand? Within the science is how can you convey information in a way that for them to make judicious decisions about their own health care.
Yeah. No, that's important. So now, after you graduated, you stayed in your country,
I work
or did you go?
I worked for the government for a couple years. They call it an internship. So I worked for the government.
Did that reduce your the cost of your education?
Oh, well, now that is an interesting story. So I took out student loans when I started. There was a lot of money at the time, and
Still is.
it still is theoretically. And I'll explain. And my family wondered, how are we ever going to pay for this? And unfortunately, one of the reasons that I left Zimbabwe and I'm now living in the United States was because the economy of Zimbabwe tanked, and it tanked so
Mm.
badly that the currency tanked. My
Oh
student
wow.
loan was in the local currency, and as inflation went up, wages went up, but the actual dollar figure of the loan was never adjusted by the government. So by the time I was done, I could afford to pay off my student loan with lunch money, essentially the cost of, a burger
Oh
and
my goodness.
a Sprite, essentially. It's
Oh my
criminal, I tell you.
goodness.
I mean, but that's what inflation did. I lucked out. Terrible for the country, but I was incredibly lucky.
You were. Oh my goodness. That's a story.
Is it?
Especially when so many young people are burdened by student loans.
This is true.
Yeah, and I've had friends who have funded their children's education and let them go to whatever college they wanted to go to and could get into. And some of them, I mean, I remember one guy wasn't a close friend, but we had a mutual friend, and that's how I met him. That he and his wife mortgaged their home so that their son could go to this private college. He didn't finish
Oh,
school.
wow.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's
But people make choices. People make
Yeah, the student
choices.
loan burden amongst medical professionals is incredible. It's incredible. And I'm just thankful and lucky that I don't have that burden.
You are blessed and highly
Indeed.
favored. Absolutely. So now tell me about your employment journey. After you left Zimbabwe and you came to the United States, did you have to have additional training after you
I
got here?
did. I did. Regardless of what country you come from in the United States, you have to go through residency training. So I got into internal medicine residency. That was in the University of Miami. And after that, I knew full well that I wanted to go into hospital medicine. A bunch of my colleagues went into different subspecialty training, but my passion was mainly in hospital medicine, and that's what I
You
did.
like
I joined a large company, a hospitalist company that provides staffing solutions for hospitals across America. And I've been working for them since in different areas. I've worked in the Midwest. I've worked in different parts of the country. Now we settled in Jersey.
Is it the patient contact that you like? Is it the patient connection, the one on one?
I
Because that's real. Hospital is really
It
close.
is.
I mean, you know what I
It
mean? It's
is.
like I guess it's not much different than seeing them in your office, but when they're in the hospital, they're more vulnerable to your earlier.
Yes, it's meeting that need at a very vulnerable time. There's an academic satisfaction to it all, exercising a lot of brain power in taking care of someone, figuring out the problem quickly. Because when someone is hospitalized, it's not a it's an acute issue that needs to be taken care of, and you get them out of the hospital, and usually involves harnessing a lot of resources, getting the right people, the right procedures, the diagnostics, the right therapeutic plan. So that's pretty challenging. That's exciting. And it's also challenging in that you have to form a relationship with someone instantly, because for the next 3 or 4 days, I'll be taking care of them, and I need to know the story of their life, essentially. When were they born? What do they eat? You know, what did their father and mother have? Are they still living? And I get to know them on an intimate level, and we only meet for just a few days, and it's exciting. It's exciting.
No, I would think that it would be. It's interesting because I don't know. I think I know that years ago, being in the hospital was not managed the way it is now. I mean, my
That's right.
father used to go into the hospital routinely because he needed a break. He would, his doctor would check him in the hospital. He'd stay there for a week. Now, if you stay in the hospital longer than 2 days, you're not doing well at all.
That's right.
Something is really wrong with
Mm,
you because they get you in and they get you out as quickly as possible.
yes.
And healthcare costs are so, I think they're
Mhm.
inflated. I think that what's the prices charged for medication when you're an inpatient, it's just ridiculous.
I was just yeah.
But do what you have
Yeah.
to do. You pay what you have to
Yeah, I was
pay.
just talking to the CEO of the company I work for just yesterday, and he brought up a statistic that boggles the mind. 50% of all healthcare dollars are spent in the hospitalization phase. So there is an incentive to get patients out of the hospital as soon as possible, rather than what we used to do back in the day, where patients would just stay and go home when they feel like.
Yeah, it was almost like a vacation. So for my father, it was.
Right.
So, oh, I don't. And I'm sure he had medical
Mm,
issues, but it wasn't. I doubt very seriously whether it wasn't something that could have been addressed at home.
I hear you.
But he felt more comfortable and more confident that he would be taken
In the
care of in the
hospital.
hospital.
Yeah.
So that's where he
Yeah.
went, and that's where his doctor sent
Times
him.
have changed
But healthcare has changed so much,
dramatically.
so much.
Dramatically.
So now you talked about the training to become a physician. That's really challenging. I know I couldn't have done it. I mean, were you now that you've been in practice for a good
Mm.
while, are you satisfied with your
Oh,
choices?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I began this journey in the year 2000. That's when I entered medical school. It was challenging, but looking back, this is the best choice I ever made outside, the choices I've made in my private life.
I was going to say, I was going to help you. I was going to help you.
That was a good save, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you did that without any help. And I can testify to that.
Thank you, thank you. So I have no regrets whatsoever in the trajectory of my career. I've been incredibly lucky to have had, I would say, the ability to get into medical school. Tremendous effort to get into medical school, and lucky enough to be practicing in this country as well. The resources that are available for me to actualize in my job. So no regrets whatsoever.
Now, there must have been times, though, that you felt maybe you had made the wrong decision. It might have been a challenge. Something might have occurred to discourage you,
Mm,
to bring you down, but you bounced back up. I mean, how do you do that? Being a physician, it's literally, and I don't use this word often because I think it's overused, it's awesome. I mean, when you think of the power that you
mm,
have over individuals, it's life and death
indeed.
in many instances. I can't imagine having that kind of
Mm,
responsibility and just acquiring the training that allows you to reach the point where you do that
mm,
competently.
mm, mm.
There had to be some periods of, is this the right thing? Am I doing it the right way? Or, I'm not getting what I need here. You know, just how do you push through?
So I'll tell you a story about, well, I'll divide it into my training, the ups and downs, the downs of training, and then in my professional career to date. So there were a lot of down days, Bev, during my training. I'll never forget the rude awakening it was. Coming out of high school, I was the man on campus academically. I didn't have an athletic bone in me, but I could academically I was top of the charts and made it into medical school without any no difficulties whatsoever. But it was extremely challenging for most. I was suddenly in class with 120 of the best minds, the best high school students who were now qualified into medical school, and was firmly mediocre amongst some of the best students, in the country. And that was the
That's
first
a rude
challenge
awakening.
where I wasn't the best at what I was doing because, if you have 120 of the best kids, somebody's got to be number 120. Someone has got to be number 60, and someone is number one. I wasn't number one anymore. So that was the first challenge, just an ego check. Learned to deal with that. But I was trained in a British system, Zimbabwe being a former British colony. The British system was rigorous to the point of perhaps unfair. It prided itself in weeding out the weakest elements within the group. Out of 120, it wouldn't be surprising if only maybe 105 graduated after 5 years. So there'll be attrition along the way. And there were many a night where I would question my decision making. It's like, am I doing the right thing here? Is this all worthwhile? It was difficult. The demands, there never seemed to be enough time in the day just to deal with all the demands of my physiology studies, my anatomy studies, my biochemistry studies. There just wasn't enough time.
Did you have study groups?
I did. I was in a study group with my roommate, and we had a little competitive, banter going on. His name is Brighton, and I'm not sure where he is. I hope he can hear this podcast. And we would rib each other a little bit because we used to have continuous assessments every 2 weeks, and I needed
Hmm.
to beat Brighton in something. He would beat me in another continuous assessment, and but we worked well together, encouraged each other, and tried to figure things out together. So yeah, that helped. Study groups help,
That helps. No, it definitely helps. Definitely helps because it helps to know, that you're not in this alone.
right?
You know it. But when you have someone that you can study with, and to your point, that encourages you and you encourage, it makes a
It does.
difference. It
It
really
does. It
makes
does. So
a
that, yeah,
difference. And you need a different perspective. You need a
this
different
is true. So
perspective.
that was the challenge that I experienced in my training, and as a professional, it is the business of healthcare, and things do go wrong sometimes, and things have gone wrong. You can't save everyone, and there are days when you wonder whether you're doing the right thing. Did you do right by a patient? If you have a poor outcome, trying to figure things out. And there are days when you ask yourself whether you're in the right profession, based off of the trajectory of some of your peers, some of your friends, and you're like, am I in the right? Did I make the right decision? Early in the pandemic, when things were really tremendously bad in the month of March of 2020, April 2020, and talking to my buddies who are investment bankers who are working in their basements, like, oh, maybe I should have done this instead.
No, it was tough.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine what it must have been like for you. It was tough watching the news reports. It was tough watching and losing people that we cared about and not being able to help them in any way. I mean, just to be told that they were gone.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a tough time. It was a horrible time. I don't think I fully communicated, even to my wife, how bad the time was because we had just had a baby at that time, the height of the first wave. And my poor wife is just trying to keep our household running. And I just didn't need to saddle her with the anguish of work, what I was going through at work. But it was a bad time. I've never seen folk just pass away like that. And it was a short, intense time that I will never forget. That first wave in early April, late March into early April. I'd say into the end of April. I don't know how we got through it. Lots of people didn't make it, and it was tremendously saddening.
I remember years ago seeing, I guess, in China, film videos of Chinese population with masks on. And I remember asking myself, I wonder why they're doing
Mm,
that. What's going on? It's smog.
yeah,
It's like, and now, I mean, I have a mask on every doorknob. I have a mask in the car. I have a mask in my purse. And I try not to leave the first floor without having a mask on. But if I do get downstairs, I don't want to take the mask off the doorknob. I come back upstairs and get the one that I should
right.
have put on up here. It's just, it's off putting to say the
Mm,
least. But I have nothing to complain about. And when I see the people who are on food lines, I'm like, this can't be happening.
mm,
It just can't be. They can't be hungry. What I'm so sick of hearing food insecurity.
yeah.
What people don't have food. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm writing checks to, feed the hungry or the Salvation Army. It just breaks my
It's
heart.
been sad. I mean, this pandemic not only has it exposed what it could do to people with pre-existing conditions, the pathophysiology of humans, but it's also exposed the socioeconomic ills. It's brought them to the forefront and really exacerbated problems that have been covered by Band-Aid. Those have been exacerbated, socioeconomically speaking.
It's extremely troubling. When I decided to go to law school finally, I knew that I couldn't be a criminal attorney. I wanted to be able to sleep at night, and I did not want anyone's freedom to depend upon my ability to be their advocate. I might not, to your
Mm,
point, I might not be up to the challenge.
I
I might miss something. Someone, because I missed something, not that I would not have worked hard and zealously defended them, I might have missed something. I didn't want that burden. I didn't want that responsibility.
I got you.
I don't know how doctors do it. I don't know how, to your earlier point, you could do something inadvertent.
Mm,
It could have been not the wrong choice, but the least favorite
I see what you
choice.
mean. Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And it's like, I'm not that kind of person. I'm
Right.
a strong woman, but I know my limitations and I need to be able to
Right.
sleep
I
at
think
night.
one way that at least that I do it is know that I've applied myself as diligently to a case as best I can. Have I applied the best known science to a particular case that I'm seeing? Have I done right by our guidelines as medical society for the treatment of whatever is in front of me? Have I also brought humanity to the treatment? Have I reached out to family at the patient's request? Have I bridged the communication gap? Or if my patient is Spanish speaking only and I don't speak Spanish, have I used all the resources available to ensure that my patient understands what's going on? If I have satisfied all those things, if I have practiced with the academic rigor that's needed, if I have brought humanity to the case, if I have communicated as clearly as possible, and my patient is well informed, then however the case pans out, I get to sleep well at night, knowing that I've applied myself as best in as best a fashion as I can.
Yeah, I understand. What keeps you going? That keeps you going?
So,
Or is it your two children and your
mhm.
wife?
Well, that's the greatest motivator of all. My kids, my wife, that's the greatest motivator. I could do anything, any profession, in the pursuit of taking care of my family. But what keeps me going in this specific profession is my enjoyment of it. I really, really enjoy working in a healthcare field. As I may have forgotten to mention at the top of the pod, that I did my MBA immediately out of residency while I was practicing. On my days off, I was doing my MBA because my interest is in healthcare management. When you were talking about your dad who would be in the hospital for a few days because he felt like, my the management part of me is like screaming because all I'm thinking is, oh, healthcare dollars, efficient use of healthcare dollars,
Oh,
patient can be better managed by a primary care physician, and but
it would have been a challenge for you.
I'm passionate about healthcare management. Although right now my career trajectory is still largely in clinical medicine. I'm a leader in clinical medicine with some influence in managing the way things go in the hospital. But my truest passion, I think the arc of my career trajectory will take me there will be full time healthcare management. So that keeps me going. I enjoy
Would
this.
you like a hospital, or you want to you want to be an entrepreneur? I know we've talked about your interest in becoming an entrepreneur, but when you say hospital or healthcare management, do you see yourself managing a health facility?
To say managing a health facility, I believe is to limit myself in my thinking right now. Perhaps I would say to be of influence. I hate the word influence because influencer has been an abused word, but to influence the direction of healthcare delivery. I'm passionate about my patients knowing and having all options and knowing exactly what's going on with them. And perhaps the entrepreneurial spirit that I have will eventually catch up with this passion of making sure that patients are as well informed of their options. When their doctors speak with them, they use the kind of language that they can understand. Because I could be speaking with the most educated person in front of me, but if they don't know the technical lingo, it means nothing to them. I've left them uninformed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know whether that's a course that doctors take, but you got to be able to translate the medical lingo into layman's
Mm,
language. I mean, as attorneys, that's what we have to
mm,
do. Somebody will say, "Oh, well, that's legalese." No, it's not.
mm,
It's
mm.
not. That's what they watch television. They think what they see on television is the way things are. You must have
Yeah.
the same issue. Quick diagnosis. Like, this is what's wrong with you. This is what we're going to do. It
No,
doesn't
it
work like
doesn't. It
that.
doesn't. And I think the School of Hard Knocks, I've perhaps early in my career wanting to come in with flair and demonstrate that I could use, technical language and wow my patients with maturity, with growth in this industry. I've learned to meet people where I should, where they understand. And unfortunately, there's no training for that kind of thing. How to talk to patients. It's
Well, but,
yeah.
but wait, but shouldn't there be?
Well, they should.
I
They
mean,
should.
for you to say there isn't any, then somebody's missing the
Yeah. Well,
boat.
the training is changing. My training in the year 2000 definitely didn't focus on the humanistic side of things, the art of medicine. It focused on the hardcore science of medicine. And I do see things changing, the treatment of the patient as a whole person and not just as a disease bearing entity that is going to be of academic excitement for these young minds.
Mm,
President Obama's healthcare reform, the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that it compels healthcare providers and hospitals to do is to provide an experience that the patient can rate, and that rating scale is tied up to compensation for the
mm,
hospital, for the provider. And so there is a new incentive, a dollar incentive for the hospitals to communicate well, because after a patient is discharged, they're going to get a survey in the mail. Did your doctor communicate with you in a way that was respectful, in a way that you could understand? Were they effective communicators? And now suddenly that's being tied to dollars and figures, and suddenly everyone's attentive all of a sudden. And this has happened
Well,
lately.
is there training provided? Is there training provided? I mean, the survey's
Mm-hmm.
fine, but if depending on what the survey results
Mm-hmm.
are, if it indicates that there's some need to improve, how does the doctor
Well,
improve?
I call it aftermarket training. The training doesn't really happen in medical school or in residency, but it becomes a part of professional development. The more savvy hospitals, savvy hospitalist companies, organizations are beginning to train their healthcare staff on patient experience, enhancing the patient experience. But you're having to undo people's formed views of what the practice of medicine is. Whatever they picked up in medical
Hmm.
school and residency, how they thought that this is how you practice, because the patient experience wasn't a taught module during their formative years, sometimes it might become a little bit difficult to change their practice when they become professionals.
When I talk about people watching television, I too watch television, and a lot of times there are medical shows, and there's always one doctor that has the God complex. You know, he can do everything.
Mm.
He or she can do everything. They're brilliant, and and I think about that. I said, that must be a heavy load. Even if you believe that,
Uh-huh.
it has to be a heavy load.
Right.
Real.
I guess in real life, I don't always see an absurd, obtuse Dr. House or something like that. But, there are certain doctors who are known to have a manner about them, so yeah, it happens.
But yeah, I guess if they're good, I guess. But what when you think about COVID-19, what did you learn from that, if
Mm,
anything? What did that experience? Did it change you? Did you feel differently about what you were doing? It must have had some effect on you.
absolutely.
Besides
Absolutely. No,
sadness. I
absolutely.
mean,
I mean, there were high moments. It seems almost moments during the crisis in which I learned about the power of the human spirit, to go through adversity and prevail. I was truly encouraged by the way that society, at least the healthcare society, came together, took risk, daily risk, to their own lives to take care of mankind.
that
And
was impressive.
that was amazing to see. I also had my faith in science restored. No, I did not restored, but reaffirmed. It was never lost. When I think of how long it took us to develop a vaccine, the techniques that we used to develop a vaccine, prior to my training at the University of Miami, I did a course in molecular medicine and translational medicine, and some of the techniques that have brought a vaccine to the forefront I recognized and I was excited and I knew that this is good science because I've been part of that kind of training and my belief in science was just reaffirmed. I was excited to see that how fast we can move, how technology has changed to help us move that fast. So I was also taken aback at the denialism of science. That also took me
Was
for
going
a
to say
loop.
science wasn't the problem. Science was not the problem. Science was doing what science was supposed to do. That was not the
Right.
problem.
Right. So that also threw me for a loop. How, as a society that is dependent on science at every corner, suddenly this was the hill to die on, for lack of a better phrase, that people would just not care for the science. That was shocking. But my overall takeaway during this pandemic has been pride in an industry that I love, the healthcare industry, how we've come together to do what needs to be done.
And you did. You all did. I mean, it was amazing just to see people. I mean, they were leaving, you were leaving your loved ones at home and going into a deadly
Mm.
environment every day. It was just, I was in awe of the commitment. I mean, first do no harm, but you don't have, do you have to, I would see the nurses and even the cafeteria
Absolutely.
workers. That's what I mean when I opened by saying, there were, excuse me, we didn't know they were essential
Absolutely.
workers. We
Mm.
didn't know the cashiers were essential workers. We didn't even think
Mm.
about that. But without the cafeteria workers, without the cashiers, without the people that delivered, not even the US mail, UPS, Federal Express, whatever delivery service there was, that's how a lot of people got what they
This,
needed if they could afford to buy
that's
stuff.
true.
And those people who didn't have the wherewithal, the financial resources, it's just heartbreaking. I never thought that this country would be in that
Mm.
position.
Mm.
And I'm not so sure we won't find ourselves in that position again because I don't think enough people have learned enough from this catastrophic experience.
Uh,
I really don't.
And I continue to be surprised on every single day. I read the news, I watch the news, and I can only but hope that science prevails. In the end, science does prevail. We might be in for a period of where people are stuck in their ways for political points and what have you, but in the end, science always prevails.
For those that end up living, I mean, how many people are dead?
We didn't have to lose 500,000 people, and it's
Living
sad.
science prevails. Those people who have passed on, those uh, over 500,000
Mm,
people, I mean,
you're right.
it's sad.
You're right.
Absolutely. But what advice do you have? What career advice would you have for a young person just starting out? If they wanted to be a doctor, if they wanted to be a hospital administrator, because you wouldn't have to be
No,
you wouldn't have to be graduate from
no, you
medical
don't have
school to
to.
be a hospital administrator.
Well,
What's the future of healthcare look like?
the future of healthcare is going to be technology driven. It's going to be for the bold, those who can make big decisions, those who are agile and change from one situation to another. Because
Yeah,
there's increasing pressure to take care of our healthcare dollars, so that we all remain solvent, so that our payers remain
yeah.
solvent. There's a lot of pressure to take care of our healthcare dollars. So anyone who has a passion for uh, improving a situation through whatever skills they have, mathematical analysis, statistical analysis, administration, anyone in science, if you think you can do it, if you have a game plan, stick to it. Stick to it. Oftentimes, a lot of students who come to my office seeking advice on their career, I'm surprised how far along they are in the pursuit of a career, that they are without a fully formed plan. And that's the one thing that continues to surprise me. I don't make the assertion that everybody should have a fully formed plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to achieve it. But I think you need to set out a vision of what you want for your life and how you want to achieve it.
They have visions. They just don't have a plan.
Perhaps that's a good
They've
way of
got
putting it.
visions. No,
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
you're absolutely right, though, Dr. Leroy. They don't have a
Mm,
plan. They have a vision.
right.
They know what, but they haven't put it down in their tablet
Mm-hmm.
or on pen to paper. They don't have a career plan or a career
Mm,
strategy. They just think they're going to be discovered because they're talented.
right.
And I don't, that's not, I don't mean to sound like I'm issuing a blanket
Mm-hmm.
indictment. I know from the young people that I interact with that I'm close to, they aren't
Mm-hmm.
planning. It's like, this is what I'm
Yeah,
doing, and this is what I'm doing now,
you're right. You're right.
and this is how,
You're right. Many years ago. Yeah,
but
you're right. Sorry to interrupt you right there.
no, go ahead.
Many years ago, when I was still living in Zimbabwe, I think it was the year 2002. I was in medical school, a second year of medical school, and I was kind of trying to figure out where my life was going. Did I want to practice in Zimbabwe? I wasn't too sure. And a mentor of mine, he was one of the elders in the parish that I attended. He happened to be a chartered accountant by day, was part of the church leadership by night, by weekend. And he said, write it down. Write down where you see yourself in the next 1 year, where you see yourself in the next 5 years, and where you see yourself in the next 10 years. I thought it was a crazy suggestion. I thought it was one of those things that people read in self help books, but I did it anyhow. And he asked me to be hyper specific. And he told me to include stuff I would not have typically included because it would influence my career decision when I felt I'll be ready to start a family. I mean, it was pretty detailed and I thought it was a lot, but I did it anyhow. And I lost that piece of paper, but I do recall a lot of the detail I had in it. Beverly,
because you
but
wrote
if
it
I
down.
tell you every single thing I wrote down on that piece of paper has happened. I don't know how, but it all has happened. It worked.
My book will be out hopefully soon, Leroy. And that's one of the things I say. You got to have a plan. You got to have a career strategy. And then you got to execute. You got to be strategic and tactical. You
That's
have
right.
to be. You can't just be going out flying by the seat of your pants. You got to think about and sometimes what you think, what you visualize, you can create, you can effectuate because it gives you something, almost something tangible, maybe not something you can touch, but something
Mm.
tangible in your
Yes, a
mind, in your
mental
mind.
purchase to, yeah,
Exactly. Visualization.
agree.
That's another thing I cover. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? You want to buy a car? Is that what you want? You want to go on a vacation? Take a picture of that car, put it in a frame, a beautiful frame, and put it next to your bed. So that's the last thing you see at night and the first thing you see in the morning. So you know that you're working towards something.
That's true.
Otherwise, you're just hanging out.
That's true. I look forward to reading your book. We've got your first book. We have it on our shelf. So I look forward to reading your next book.
I am so, I've called this COVID-19 pandemic a war. You are a soldier. You are a lieutenant, a general. I don't know anything about military, classifications, but you and others like you. I don't know how we can ever repay you for your sacrifice and your risk taking. I mean, you all have taken risks
Mm.
and stepped out, perhaps on faith, perhaps because you believed in science for whatever reason. We're all grateful to you. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you.
much.
Thank you for that very generous description of what we've been doing. And I'm appreciative of my community, my family, my loved ones, my professional support. They made it that much easier, to go in and do this.
Well, we thank you. And thank you for taking the time. I
I
enjoyed
enjoy
this.
speaking with you, Beverly. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
And give my love to the
I sure
ladies.
will. I sure will.
Okay, good night.
Take care. Good night. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at BAWilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, Women's Voices Amplified.